Hey everybody, Timo here. I'm here with Pranav from Refi by South. Hi Pranav.
Hi, Timo.
Thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Frankly, this. I've been waiting for this. Yes, to be speaking with you. I follow you so much around. I practically shadow. Sometimes doing that. Yeah. Thank
Before
you.
we came on, we were admiring each other's mustaches, so we can do some of that.
Totally, totally. Maybe we can run a poll. Yeah. Which one is like coming out better? Yeah.
Good, good. Well, I have YouTube going and LinkedIn going. So if people have questions, they can chat at either place, or they can come over to basin.live and join actually by video if they want to do a call in. If they're on their browser, Chrome browser, they can use the Riverside call in functionality, and we'll bring them up on stage. But while I'm doing some technical stuff, Pranav, why don't you go ahead and tell everyone about Refi by South, and you are a leader in the refi movement, and it's nice to have some friends across the globe. It's 11:30 p.m. where you are. It's 11 in the morning here in Colorado, so it's cool to be doing a global movement for climate, nature, carbon, and impact. So welcome, and please give us a rundown on what you're doing.
Thank you so much. Firstly, thank you so much for having me here. A huge shout out to you for the good work that you do and the example that you set for all of us. No question about that. Uh, about myself, I'm speaking to you from Mumbai, India. I have a background in sustainability, in family business, ran my own garment manufacturing unit for almost like 15 years. I've been in the sustainable space since 2012-13 because of the sort of shift from the family business to the entrepreneurship thought process in sustainability. I got into the startup ecosystem. Along my journey, I have run an accelerator. I've worked with different angel ecosystems as a mentor. I've been part of India's first circular fashion platform, been part of a plastic traceability and transparency solution, been part of a crypto exchange. And yeah, as you can see, my journey essentially brought me closer and closer to blockchain. And essentially, I then just saw this huge, frankly, an opportunity. And the first time I saw it, it was literally just an opportunity, right? The climate is definitely a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. And blockchain lends itself so well to this climate problem. I just sort of fell for it. And I fell down the rabbit hole, been down there since 1.5 years. Refi by South actually came about as my being part of Loa Labs. So Loa Labs, just a quick shout out to Dave, uh, even better leader, frankly, and just putting together this amazing kick-ass team of people across the globe. And one of the things that really came out at Loa Labs was that we need to be giving first. That's the principle, and that's a challenge that I faced when I was from the global south. Because frankly, most of the conversations, most of the things that were happening were on time zones which were not really suitable for the south. So I started out really with that objective, started out with really pulling these conversations into the global south. I did a bunch of Twitter spaces in the start of 2022. Uh, I then realized that, it's not necessary for the Twitter spaces to be only in English. And so that's the sort of second part of where Refi by South started out with, is to literally localize refi conversations, just enabling refi ambassadors and asking them to do Twitter spaces in their home countries, in the local languages, just making leaders, enabling leaders, the leadership quality in them, right? So that's something that we've done. We also realized along the way that COVID was over. It was time for people to really come together in a room. And in India, refi was pretty much an alien concept. So a bunch of us projects, about 7 of us, got together and did India's first refi summit. We had 100
Mm.
plus people attend. We had 15 plus speakers, including folks from the climate change space. These are people who are doing impact projects on ground. So these are not like Web3, but Web2 impact projects who are just curious about how technology can help them. We had 10 plus projects talking about the work that they're doing in refi in India, POCs. and actual work, actual projects. Some of them actually working with state governments, although they don't call themselves refi. It's like purely technology helping address climate change. But yeah, those projects are definitely there. And then we also had VCs, and believe it or not, they were interested. They're listening, they're learning all the time. And we had a cat which owned the place. So we did this event in a factory which had been repurposed into a creative space. So there was like an organic garden, there was aquaponics, and there were cats roaming around the place, like just owning the space, frankly. And we were just blessed. I think the energy from the space itself put all of us in that zone that we've all come here to build, to collaborate. So that's been another milestone in the Refi by South journey. Going forward, we have like plans, a lot of them around education, and that's around really onboarding perhaps the next billion to Web3. And again, not necessarily in English, but in the local languages. We have plans around discovery, really surfacing a lot of these impact projects, which would which would be really helped by these Web3 wrappers, which would enable them to make business models, monetize their impact, and connect to corporates and businesses and governments who are looking to have these data points around impact and fund such people, who are doing impactful work. So that's like the discovery part of it. And then there's of course this whole interoperability part of it. You'll be surprised, there are chains in India, there are L1s in India who are still who are doing refi projects, right? So there's like, and that's like mind blowing, right? The question that arises is, do we need another L1? I mean, we have plenty, right? So just getting people to think about this before they again sort of want to build out the entire tech stack, right from the L1 to the DApp, right? And to tell them, what, there's a lot of work being done already. You can potentially stand on the shoulders of giants and look further, get to market faster, monetize better, rather than just trying to reinvent the wheel every time. And it doesn't have to belong to you. It's commons, it's climate, it affects us all, and there's big enough a pie for all of us to really take. So that's Refi by South. We really want to touch people in the global South, bring their voice to the fore, discover projects, help them scale, and ensure there's interoperability in them. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Cool. Well, I love the approach. Global, right, starts local, and I love the approach. With time zone, local culture, language barriers. You're very influential, and you're very active, and you're working super hard. You're up in the middle of the night. You're up early in the morning. Dealing with people around the world. So kudos to you and everything you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Cool. Yeah, you're welcome. Just to zoom out a little bit, we are using the word refi, right? Or regenerative finance. Over the last year and a half, through your journey, have you settled on a definition? Or if I ask you today, what's your definition of refi in a couple sentences?
To be honest with you, I am a salesman, so I'll usually make sure that I get the person to buy a refi, and I'll tell him what he wants to hear, right? But the truth of it is, the truth of it is, that personally inside, I believe that the technology itself lends very well, right? And I could call it different names, right? So, for example, I'll essentially talk about a better version of DeFi. I'll talk about the fact that every chain in the short term will have their climate hero projects, because impact capital in every chain, whether it is Polygon or Ethereum or any other chain that you can think of, there'll always be these people who want to do good with their money, want to do good with the tokens. So they'll gravitate towards projects which are doing good, which potentially could be climate projects, right? So you'll have, and they're not the DeFi folks, they're not the degens, they're not just chasing returns, they're chasing impact. So as opposed to those DeFi, we have these refi in every chain, right? So that's like one version of what I really offer to people. The other bit that I offer, of course, is regenerative finance, and the fact that it's really about enabling ecosystems, just adding to them rather than being an extractive system, right? That's the other definition that I give. And then, of course, as a last, I just offer to them that, again, in all probability, this is just an acronym that probably Gregory came up with or you came up with, and that's just the truth of it, right? It's refi. But yeah, I mean, those are the three versions that I offer. But I think the fact that blockchain offers collaboration at scale. It offers trust in a trustless environment. It enables decentralization. It just empowers folks on the first mile. A lot of times you'll hear people talking about the last mile. People refer to waste collectors as the last mile, or people refer to folks who are attending to the rivers or the farmers as the last mile. To me, it's not the last mile; it's the first mile, right? They are the ones who are really at the edge of it, right? So blockchain really enables us to empower a lot of these first mile. You can collect data points at origin without human intervention, probably through IoT. So you can be assured of the trust, traceability, transparency. And then you can do wonders with those data points. You can definitely monetize them. That's the low hanging fruit, frankly, right? But it's the analysis that you do on it, right? How do you allocate resources based on those data points? How do you let those data points inform you? That's where the potential opportunity lies, right? For us as private entrepreneurs, for the governments for sure, if they can get themselves to see it. But yeah, that's refi for me.
I love the first mile, last mile. Like, the way to look at the opposite into the spectrum. What came to mind for me, Pranav, is like upstream, downstream, right? Of like our actions, right, affect someone downstream, and eventually it comes in a cycle. So I love that.
Absolutely.
Cool. So I'm just I shared your grant link here. We're doing these spaces, or the Basin Live interviews. This is being streamed out to YouTube, streamed out to LinkedIn. We're recording these. They're going to be posted back to an edited version on YouTube and podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatnot. One of the goals, first, we're here for Gitcoin Climate Round, the Gitcoin Alpha Round, which has been instrumental in Basin's journey over the last year. Gitcoin has funded at this point almost 70 million in public goods funding, several million for climate. This round specifically, we're testing out the new software, new protocol. There's $333,000 up for matching funds for these approximately 50, 60 projects in the climate round. For me, one of the big goals right now is with the events of last year of FTX and SBF and Terra collapse and whatnot, is like Web3, crypto, blockchain bad, right? It's like scam, people just gambling, whatnot. But it's like there's people building real tools, creating real solutions for the climate crisis, the nature crisis, the biodiversity crisis, the income inequality crisis, whatnot. So what would you say to the audience, rather than being in our echo chamber, right? We talked about earlier on the Twitter space of like our echo chamber of refi and Web3. Like, what would you say to people on LinkedIn who are watching who don't know about these things? Like, what are your thoughts?
I got a simple filter for them, and it's as beautiful. Every refi project and every project that they see which claims to be refi would necessarily have data points originating in the real world. That's the filter, right? Every climate project, every impact project would be picking up data points from the real world. It's not like money moving between wallets. It's actually data points that we're taking up, bringing on chain, and then essentially building on them, right? And these could be weather data points, that can be sold. These could be soil data points, which will decide, okay, whether the carbon credits can be generated out of those particular data points, right? These could be impact data points, which show whether a particular work has been done, literally, whether a beach has been cleaned up, right? And those data points, by virtue of them being collected at the point of origin, bought on chain, in transparent, trustless, method, can lend themselves to a lot of authenticity, integrity, veracity. And by doing so, they can remove the gatekeepers. We can lower the costs. Simply the technology, of course, lowers the cost, but also because when you remove this whole requirement of a verification, of this third party person who comes in and says, you know what, you are doing good, but now when I say you're doing good, then you're really doing good, so that, and it costs a lot of money to do that, right? And the moment you have this entire data points originating in real life being bought on chain, trust being established there, those costs can be removed, right? And now suddenly you have a very different business model, right? which lends itself very well for action to be taken by individuals, companies, governments. And that's a good example that I give to people, when they question me too much about it, is about plastic waste in India, right? And there is a certain type of plastic poly bags which have been banned in India. And if you can think about it, right, it's very difficult in a country like India to ban something, because there's usually this challenge about, if you ban something, people's livelihoods will get hurt, and how will they survive? And it's a very touchy topic. But then at a certain point, the government, everybody realizes plastic is just choking all of us up, right? So then they decide to say, you know what, we'll stop this. And that particular quality of plastic disappears because it just stops. The government puts the foot down. So there's definitely the play about statutory angle coming in. There's definitely the play about empowering the stewards, and there's definitely the opportunity for us as entrepreneurs, right, to put together these use cases and to build these businesses. Like, to me, I definitely come in with the lens of a business, and I would not touch it if there were not a business model around it. And I'm pretty sure, there's a definite business model around all of the work that we do in Refi. And if we are not seeing it, well, we just need to dig deeper, because there's definitely a customer buying whatever we are selling for the work that we're doing. So yeah.
You come back to the salesman in you.
I've sold for too many years. Yeah.
What comes to mind, Pranav, when you say that about, like, increased efficiencies, lower cost? We were talking earlier this week with Bloom Network and cooperatives, like, people are happier doing their jobs when they have an ownership stake in things, that, that they're building something that they're a part of, like a movement, as Dave always says from Lolo Labs. But what comes to mind is, I think it's the blockchain 50 that Forbes does every year. It's like, if people, when people question me about like Web3 and crypto and blockchain, I say, just look at that from March of last year, and I'm excited to see what this year. Those are some of the biggest corporations, biggest supply chain companies, the shipping companies, the insurance companies, using blockchain underneath the hood to do those things: increase efficiencies, lower cost. And I feel like, this little rabbit hole that we're in over here is trying to do the same thing for regeneration, restoration, conservation, whatnot.
Absolutely. Completely hear you. Completely hear you. So that so resonates with me. Yeah. And I mean, that's the interesting part of it, right? You would have heard so much about India being anti-crypto and all of that stuff. But I can tell you for the fact that there are governments in India, state governments in India, right, which are working with projects which are addressing climate change. They could be, bringing, water credits on board. They are talking about mapping soil quality, right? And these are like projects which are being funded and started off and collaborated with by state governments. So it's just, it's a lot of it has also got to do with the narrative. The moment we talk about specifically around tokenization, crypto, building our own little world, that kind of presses a lot of wrong buttons. Whereas, frankly, the point we are at as an industry, we are just better served by saying, you know what, it's blockchain, climate. It's climate, blockchain, and climate is one of the best use cases for blockchain, right? And that's what we do. It's just leveraging technology, and we've been leveraging technology for the longest time now. Nobody has a problem with that. So I think, to me, that's always the approach. That's how I literally sell it. And yeah, I mean, I know of multiple projects, and I wouldn't say they're like in hundreds, right? Because we are definitely out there in the lead, because there's this gap around. Frankly speaking, people don't even see the problem right now. Climate is not really a problem for a lot of people, and that's weird, right? Because I'm pretty sure in the next 1 or 2 years, the insurance guys are going to be the first to really pick this up, because they're going to hike insurance premium across the board for all the places, for all the categories which are going to get affected by climate, right? And that's when businesses are going to realize, because insurance is going to go through the roof. And then they'll suddenly realize, oh shit, we haven't done something about it. This is the time to do something about it. Yeah.
Yeah, to me, it comes back to risk, and what that's something we're core to what we're doing at Basin, is how do you make risk investable? And it's like, who holds the risk in a certain area, industry, town? And at the end of the day, banks, insurance companies, like you said, governments. I asked my youngest daughter, the other day, we were driving, and we were talking about climate risk, and I said, well, who holds the risk? And she thought about it for a minute, and she goes, all of us. Like, we all have climate risk one way or the other, whether you're invested in a company, whether you own a business, whether you donate to a philanthropy, whether you hike on a trail, whether you go swimming in the ocean, whether you travel across the world. Like there's risk for all of us. So it's like, how do we, like, you were talking about incentives, like how do we change the incentives around, like, to like for the plastic waste, like you mentioned, for example, like how do we create a positive outcome, a non-extractive outcome for that?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, and the plastic problem in India, for example, has been addressed by what we call the extended producer responsibility policy. And since I was part of that business for some time, uh, I just love that concept about how a small amount of money coming in as EPR can really set off a chain reaction. It can create that demand for plastic to be pulled off the streets, right? It's like a chain reaction, and you suddenly have like just the effects getting amplified through the supply chain, with of course a little bit of statutory government push, but really just solving and addressing a huge problem in the entire country, right? About waste. So yeah, there's lots of
Pranav, what would you call that? The extended supply chain, or extended?
extended producer responsibility (EPR). So that's the policy around a very particular kind of waste called multi-layered packaging. That's one of the worst kinds of plastic. These your Lay's wrappers, your Pepsi Coke covers, which is like a mix of plastic and paper, or it's multiple layers of plastic with paper in between. That's you can't really recycle it. It has to be incinerated. So the government in India has made it mandatory that whatever you put out, whatever the FMCG majors, the Hindustan Levers, the Unilevers of the world, whatever you put out into a market in a particular state. So assume you put out 20,000 tons in a particular state, you got to give money to bring all of that packaging back. And that's like a statutory requirement. You can't escape that. So if you're putting plastic into the environment, you have to compulsorily pay for it to be recovered back, right? And at the moment, it's not like a very high price, right? Because in India, labor is cheap. There's just so many of us, right? But it sets off a chain reaction, right? Number one, companies start looking how to avoid this. It becomes like this tax that they want to avoid. So they start looking for alternatives. And number two, even if they have to put it out, they start building out these inward supply chains to pull off all of that plastic back from the environment, because they can't escape it. If I find a Unilever wrapper on the road, right, in a city, I'm pretty sure Unilever put it out there, right? And Unilever is responsible for it, right? It's got its name on it. So that extended producer responsibility is a great use case for carbon. It's I'm not a use case as a role model for carbon. There's lots of lessons that world over we can learn from how plastic is being managed. I'm not saying plastic management is a success story. Huge challenges out there, right? But it's definitely further up in the learning curve than we are in the carbon conversation and the ecosystem credit conversation.
It's I'm going to find the link here, but I've always thought, like you mentioned, the Unilever wrapper, the Doritos wrapper, whatever. You're walking down the street and you see like a cigarette, or Budweiser can or Coca-Cola can. Like, to me, why isn't that like negative marketing, right? Or like there should be some sort of tokenized like incentive around, like, that company, right, made that. Yeah, they made it for the consumer, but Seth Godin, one of my favorite authors, speakers, whatnot, had, on one of his podcasts, he talked about in the U.S. we had the campaign back before I was born, right? Don't be a litter bug. And it was basically, and he did some research on it regarding that, like the big corporations, the consumer packaged good corporations, were behind that campaign that basically shifted that responsibility to consumers of like, hey, you don't litter, it's your trash, like you need to pick it up. It's not Budweiser's trash or Coca-Cola's trash or Unilever's trash or whatnot. So I think there's something there in what you're talking about. And like you mentioned, carbon, right? Like carbon is a waste product, and whoever's creating the waste product, you could argue it's, me driving my truck or whatever. It's like, but it's like, well, where did the waste actually originate? Like who, what waste, came in that scope 1, 2, and 3 supply chain
Yeah,
to actually, do that.
I hear you. So let me tell you one example which really blows people's mind. Once I share it with them, right? And this is around circular economy. So to me, a lot of these companies, at least the smart ones, are already picking on this and literally building this out as a customer loyalty program. And if you think about it, a circular economy is like a giant customer loyalty program, right? So if I'm a company and I'm selling something to you, and if I'm telling you, you know what, when you're done with it, just give it back to me, what am I doing out here? I'm closing the loop, and I'm going to obviously give you some incentive for doing that. And I've got you hooked for life, right? Because you're going to come back to me always. It's like a loyalty program, and I've got you for keeps, right? And
I mean, it's almost like the old milk jugs, right? Or the, you know, I grew up in Michigan here in the U.S., and you know, we always had 10% or 10-cent deposit on every single bottle and can, and there was people, you know, in college or whatever that made a living collecting those cans, and even if the consumer actually, you know, didn't return them, like there was value in that. So it's I like that, the circular closing the loop.
absolutely, yeah.
Well, cool. What are the next steps for Refi by South? I've shared your grant link. I'll share it here again in the comments or the question or the the Q&A. But what are the next steps for you and what your project?
For the next 3 months, there's definitely scaling up the Refi Ambassador program, just getting more people out there, enabling them, incentivizing them to do Twitter spaces in the local languages or even events where they can, and definitely being helped and supported by Refi Spring in this. Uh, there's an event coming up where we are doing a hackathon, a Refi hackathon, India's first Refi hackathon at a location which is a pilot location for a Refi project in India. And again, we want to bring in climate change makers from the Web2 space, from the impact space. We want to bring in developers, founders, and investors, and just get them a curated 100 people group to work on problems in a real world setting. Right? So that's like coming up in March. And then, yeah, just further out from there, we have to some major players in starting off with the Indian ecosystem in terms of, okay, how do we enable project discovery, right? There's just lots of projects which are doing good work. How do we enable them?
What was the ecosystem you said? The near?
Sorry?
What ecosystem did you say?
Multiple ecosystems. So there's a bunch of local entrepreneurship ecosystems, Web3 entrepreneurship groups. There's like Bidlers Tribe, there's Founders HQ, and there's a bunch of them. There's the Product House, and they all are like large communities. And we're partnering them, we're collaborating with them, and that's like in India. And then of course there's in Singapore and multiple other organizations we're reaching out to. So that's around project discovery. And then of course, going forward, there's the interoperability bit. So then there are these conversations we're having with AWS in terms of, okay, how can we really collect all of these different use cases which are in India, and just make a case study book or case study presentation out of that, right? To showcase that, what, this is how blockchain technology is being leveraged for climate action. It's as simple as that. Blockchain technology leveraged for climate action, right? Show use cases, and then that suddenly opens up a lot of possibilities. So it's like education, it's project discovery, it's enabling this interoperability between different projects, right? So that all of that, it's like a trajectory, if I can call it, starting off with education around discovery and then interoperability. Yeah. So next 3 months, there's definitely education and discovery happening. Yeah.
Cool. Well, that reminds me, and you probably already talked to Climate Collective, or you know Nirvan.
Yes.
He showed me a project he's working on yesterday, basically a Git book for exactly that. And it's a collaborative project, but basically, Web3 climate like playbook. So all the stuff you just mentioned, you should definitely get with Nirvan and add this, the practices. He's looking at solution patterns, which I love. That concept of like, what are the solutions, and then let people do with it what they will. So
Yeah, love that. Absolutely. So Nirvan is coming to India in February, and yeah, we're due to catch up. Definitely. Yeah.
cool. Well, thanks so much for all the work you're doing in refi and climate. The organizing on the ground. The global organization, time zone, language differences. I love the energy and enthusiasm you bring. So thanks for coming.
Love that. Thank you so much. And at a certain point, I do have an ask of you. At a certain point, I would definitely want to do this the other way, but I want to hear more about you. Where you're talking. And obviously, I follow a lot of the work that you do, so I do that. But I think there's definitely a case to be made for all of us to learn more about you, for sure.
Well, cool. I owe it to you to stay up late. One night I'm kind of a night owl, anyways. So you just let me know, and we'll figure it out. And I just have to. I talk loud, so my kids and wife don't want to hear me talking in the middle of the night. But I can go out to the workshop in the garage or something. So
Sounds great. Absolutely. Love that. Thank you for having me.
cool. Yeah, cool. Well, you're welcome to stick around, but if you don't mind, just switching over to the Basin Live link as an audience member, and we'll welcome Kyle to the show. Thank you, Pranav.
Thank you. Bye-bye. I'll make a move.
Bye.
Have a great day.
You too.
Hi, how's it going?
Good, Kyle. How are you?
I'm good. I guess I turned off my camera by accident. I can't turn it on, but oh well.
No problem. We can hear you fine, so that's great. And but welcome, Kyle. Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, happy to chat about LexDAO.
Cool. Well, I don't, just to clarify, I don't think you have a specific project in the Gitcoin round right now, or is LexDAO or one of your other projects in one of the other two rounds?
Yeah, LexDAO was in OSS.
Okay, cool. So clarification. We're like the spaces we're doing over here are mainly focused on the Gitcoin Climate Round. There's three different subsets of the Gitcoin Alpha round where they're testing all this stuff out. So Kyle is with LexDAO, a legal engineering guild, and he's got a bunch of other projects that he worked with, KaliDAO, which is creating a multi-sig wallet, on-chain LLCs, legal entity wrappers, and then he's got this really cool impact DAO workshop, like legal workshop that I think some refi projects are going to start using. So with that, Kyle, why don't you just give people a rundown of like all those different things and kind of how you ended up here?
Yeah, definitely. And I'll also mention a little bit about our OSS work because that's what the grant is for specifically. Cool. But yeah, so LexDAO, we're the International Legal Engineers Guild. And so legal engineers are people oftentimes practicing lawyers, but definitely know their way around code. Many of us are very high level Solidity developers, not myself, but Ross is one of our more accomplished engineers, and he's worked on Moloch V, all the Moloch frameworks actually. And that's a really important low level architecture for DAOs. So if you're interested in using a DAO, Moloch is, it's good to know about that if you like to look under the hood. Otherwise, DAO House is one of the platforms you can spin up a DAO, and then Kali, which is what Ross has directly contributed to. Kali, that's a LexDAO partner. It developed out of LexDAO. I also developed a LexDAO that's in the Climate Round, by the way. Just real quick, is TaterDAO, and I believe you're chatting with them in a top of the hour or something like that. But so LexDAO, we also do services. So it's not just the straight up code. I mean, so for this grant round, that's what you will be donating to, the aspect of LexDAO that does just straight up do the code. But we also, so for instance, every Monday, I hold the office hours in LexDAO Discord. You can go to our Discord, LexDAO, LEXDAO.chat. And so, so every Monday at, I believe it's 10:30 Pacific time, office hours. And so you can join the chat and ask whatever you want about public legal education in this space. And I'm a strong believer in public legal education generally, but especially in the DAO space, where even the professionals, the lawyers working on this day in and day out, don't really know the answers because it's such a young space and innovating in law tech. It's all the more important that we have public legal education and that the public revisits. In law, it's called noting up. But every 6 months or so, you maybe ask the same questions you did before. For instance, is everyone still advising to spin up a UNA as kind of your initial exploratory stage? Right now, we are still. that's a good kind of thing to look at as a UNA, as a way to, as opposed to just not choosing any legal entity. But yeah, that's an example of where LexDAO overall has quite a bit of synergies within the different kind of guilds that we have. So real world assets is one guild, and that's really quite related to climate. Yeah, people have to own land and have leased the land often to be able to revive the land and be a good steward of it. And that's TaterDAO will probably speak more to that guild within LexDAO. But the Una thing, the wrapper, that's where Kelly, that guild, and then the clinic, which is what I founded in LexDAO, we have synergies. So Kelly has a product that's an NFT. It's a wrapper that is operating agreement. And so people can choose an LLC or they can choose Una, and there are some offshores that will be there fairly soon. And there's sometimes a bit of for Una, it's great because you kind of can choose to Una, and you're pretty much, well, you still need an EIN. You can self-serve an EIN, but the clinic offers that. So the clinic offers kind of last mile for whatever you can't do with a nice NFT wrapper or something like that. And yeah, I'm getting a little bit in the weeds here, but NFT wrappers are pretty cool because you can put that in any DAO you actually have. So if you choose Aragon or you choose Colony, you can take that NFT and just put it in the DAO, safe, Gnosis safe. So it gives a lot more flexibility. You don't necessarily have to use what LexDAO is building out its DAO system, though we believe in the governance decisions generally, right? So like one thing we have in Cali is that tokens are non-transferable, but then people can vote to make them transferable. You can also start out with it being transferable, but that's a way for people to deal with securities law, is when they're ready to take on that burden of transferable, then they can make that switch. But at the very early stage, they can do non-transferable. And then I personally have never seen a situation where a non-transferable could be considered a security. So yeah, so when you donate to this round, it's one way to think about it is we lower the transaction costs for legal. Just generally, we're automating the law. The services we provide, the clinic I just mentioned, that's a student plus supervisor model. So law students do most of the work, and they get great education. They're much cheaper than lawyers, and then lawyers just make sure do quality assurance and such. So it's high quality still. And in the clinic, we prioritize legal aid for impact DAOs. So definitely DAOs are focused on doing good things for the climate. We give top priority to. And yeah, we already have really low costs, but as we grow, we'll also continue to subsidize those and continue to automate them. So we're also doing stuff with AI. And so, yeah, so if you donate to the OSS, that could ultimately end up in some AI. And those AI things we're doing, they tend to be chatbots. So you can get your public education kind of by yourself, just kind of chatting with the bot. Yeah.
Cool. Kyle, I love all the alphabet soup, right? Of like all the different DAOs, like Lex and Tater and Code Slaw, and all the different little slang words we have. And I saw LexDAO's poll the other day of like, should we on our Twitter profile or our Twitter stream be more like professional, like the way I understood it is more like legal, lawyery, or should we be more like they didn't say shit posting, but like more just like kind of Raggedy Ann, kind of just using all these different slang words and whatnot. I definitely voted the latter because I love the style of it. So
well, thank you.
Cool. I'm trying to find the link here. Looks like so the correct link is with the Code Slaw hat on the profile picture. Is that right, Kyle? For this, I'm gonna just post it here in the chat.
Yeah, let me have a look here.
I just want to make sure everyone's looking at the right project.
It is the right one. Yeah.
Okay.
And we have received donations already, so I think that's the deal with all these grants is they're not showing right now the funding received, but we are doing well this round. So just so you know, yeah.
Okay, cool. And so just for example, when Kyle was talking about like the Kali DAO and the software that they've built, later today we'll be speaking with James and Nick from Tater DAO and Cougar DAO and Real World Assets Consortium. In Cougar DAO, we used a Kali safe to deploy the contract for the Coug token, and the Coug token is just LLC shares basically, but it's on chain. So that's like the real world use case of what Kyle was just explaining.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great that you're an actual pilot of this stuff, and that's open source software. So if you decide to donate to our grant, those funds will go towards these types of real world products. We also have escrow agreement that I believe at least Raid Guild relies on, and we'll see what the future brings. The other cool stuff we'll build, and we're also opening it up the grants to other groups that are doing Code's Law. So it's not just LexDAO members that this money is going to go towards, as we're just generally building out our grant system, just like many of the other DAOs in this ecosystem. Grants, it'll probably be on Discourse where people can even see who's submitting what, and just open dialogue, more and more public. And really, what matters is not that group is part of LexDAO or not. What matters is that they're what they're going to do with that working capital is make really important Code's Law. And so LexDAO as a community, we have that expertise to really go, yeah, okay, this is important. Just like the what you've spun up with Cougar, building out that kind of apparatus.
Yeah. So one of my favorite things about like LexDAO and is that all you guys, right, or either went to law school for the most part, or are attorneys or were attorneys, or but you're also programmers, you're also marketers. I feel like these different DAOs that are like coming out of LexDAO are like pushing the edge of like business law and contract law and securities law and real estate law. It's just really cool to see, Kyle.
Thank you. Yeah, and my background's entertainment law, so we're also doing that quite a bit. And when at a certain point, hopefully, it's really important that entertainers, they support climate action and such, right? So there's a possibility that there'll be an intersection for climate entertainment, but for now, we're pushing the limits. We haven't kind of circled back to climate with LexDAO's entertainment. That's all copyright and patent, even a little bit.
Yeah, I mean hopping on to LexDAO Discord and being able to just ask a question, and the biggest thing is like LexDAO or you or Ross or James or Nick, we're not your attorney, right? But like you can go on there and ask a question, and you'll have 5 or 6 people, right, who are attorneys, or practicing, not practicing, whatever, giving you their input. I mean, it's amazing. It's an amazing resource, really.
Thank you. Yeah, and especially questions that are difficult for a general attorney to answer. Questions about a snapshot, more DAO type of issues. How do DAOs engage with the law? That's where we're very helpful. It's difficult to really get education for that type of niche law, and that tends to be what our ecosystem are the most pressing questions.
So beyond like all the normal law stuff, in code stuff, like let's say business and finance and copyright and patent law, you run these clinics, which I think your focus is more on impact, right? Is that can you just give us some background on that?
Yeah. So the clinic is it's got 2 main goals. One is educating law students, and then the other one is giving impact DAOs a leg up with legal aid. So oftentimes impact DAOs are taking on that burden of making sure they don't have negative externalities and trying their best to do positive externalities. So that tends to mean that in the market, there's a bit of a handicap compared to a competitor that is polluting and really putting the costs on the society writ large, right? So this is a way to kind of counterbalance that. Also, just generally, legal costs are really high. So even if we're not thinking in this competitive, there are the polluters and the non-polluters, or whatever it is, even if it's still, are people doing pro-social activities? We have limited resources, right? So we can't offer them to everyone. And so we prioritize the ones that are doing the really amazing stuff in Web3 that we believe in, right? To make the world a better place. And then we help them as best we can to keep their legal costs down, since legal costs are so high. And so really that's just ultimately the value add. As we go, we automate for instance, we're getting more into AI, so the AI can take these case studies we're doing with the various DAOs that we're helping. So we also work in public in the clinic, which is kind of a radical concept for law, but for Web3, it's part of the ethos. And so we're finding there many clients are actually really into that. And so, yeah, so eventually, even though we're initially prioritizing the DAOs that are doing some really important things, ultimately we'll have a lot of self-help resources that really anyone can take advantage of. Yeah.
I love that, like the building in public, the learning in public. I mean, that's one of the reasons I'm doing this like basin.live format. It's streaming over on LinkedIn, and it's streaming over on YouTube, and we're going to do some stuff next week where it might actually be able to go to multiple LinkedIn profiles and multiple YouTube channels all at once. But to like just open up, right? Like, Pranav and I were just speaking about like what's happened in the last year in crypto, right, and blockchain and Web3 is like all three of those words have become bad words, like like scammy, casino type stuff. But it's like if you go through these Gitcoin grants, the three different rounds, whether it be the open source round or the infra round or the climate round, all three of those different rounds with all the different projects are creating real world impact and tools for human coordination, ecosystem services, law, impact, policy, finance. I mean, it's these are real world use cases, like media, storytelling. Like it's that's what I tell people. It's like it's not just like JPEGs, right? Of like images of monkeys and whatever. I mean, it's like there's real stuff being built over here. So that's the purpose of what we're doing with the basin.live is to let people know that.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, there's unfortunate chilling effect for bad actors in our space, and earlier years it was always problematic, but now that we're so close to the early majority and this life cycle of this technology, it's going to stay with the pop culture sensibilities about us, right? Like before, crypto was kind of out there, like the previous cycle, right? But this cycle, people point to, hey, look, Larry David, right? So it's even.
Yeah, that ad. I mean, that ad is like they were just setting themselves up. You're referring to the FTX ad, right, from last year? Yeah, with Larry David.
Yeah. So it's different, right? Like last bear market, and there were a lot of bad actors that kind of were exposed, right? Because the bear market, it definitely had a chilling effect. The whole people thinking that crypto is about a scam. But then this recent bull, it went, oh, okay, well, that was just Luddites or whatever, right? But now because there was so much publicity, this most recent bull, because crypto got to that point where it actually was in majority cultures, advertisements, Super Bowl, all that, right? That when the bad actors, once again, now it's also something that everyone is looking at. So the main thing I'm saying is this next round, when this next bull we have, really should be led by regens and people that are showing how much this is this technology is going to change humanity for the better by far. I mean, we obviously have to build it out this way, so it's important we have this feedback loop of this culture that takes the lead, and then this culture grows as well, and so more and more people buy into the culture, and that's one of the great things about Gitcoin is that these grant rounds is a way to sustain this culture and build it out. But yeah, I definitely see LexDAO. One of the main goals of LexDAO is that we help with compliance, so governments see that there's that they're not combative, and another whole aspect of LexDAO is we do crypto advocacy. So we kind of do think tank stuff about bills and give our comments to bills, and this next stage in our evolution, we then have a whole a coalition of DAOs that see what LexDAO has done. They put their name on it, and then we're working with lobbyists to actually go to the Hill and give the senators that basic information, all that. Yeah, so because if we get the regulation right, basically that we can self-regulate as much as possible, and then we do a good job self-regulating, at least LexDAO, we believe that that'll be much better for everyone in the long run.
I dropped that in the chat there. This Brad Fell, the prominent VC here in Colorado and nationally, posted this last week, and I'll just read it real quick. He says, "I regularly hear to be patient. It's like the internet was in 1999, ahead of its time. The builders are building, and it'll take over everything in the future." And he goes on to say, "Just beware of the Ponzi schemes." But I think the post, and I'll post it here, is the title of the post was I don't hate crypto, and it's like kind of just that bad image that crypto has and people who are against it. But smart people are now starting to see that like there's real infra, right, in real tools, in real efficiencies. Like for example, what LexDAO is in KaliDAO is building. Like if you can, on Kali, you can do an option for a 2-click, right, or a 7-click entity formation for your unincorporated nonprofit association, your LLC. As Kyle mentioned, there's going to be some offshore entities, but talk about efficiencies in lowering the cost. And these are real like entities, right, in Delaware or Wyoming, or maybe Switzerland for the offshore, or Cayman. Have you decided yet?
The first one's gonna be Marshall Island, actually.
Oh, Marshall Island. Okay, cool. Cool. Well, how can people support you? Obviously, head over to the grant round here. I'll post that link again in the chat. People can donate to that round. They can donate to the climate round. There's a lot of cool projects to look at and check out. But what does LexDAO need, or what does your clinic need most, or Kali need most right now?
Well, if you're a lawyer or a legal engineer, a lawyer that is interested, crypto lawyer, right, in this space, and especially if you're a law student, do reach out to us. If just generally, really, but law students, there are great working opportunities in the clinic. You can get to know some of the larger DAOs in this space, or even some of the startup DAOs. We've got an interesting range of DAOs that engage with us. I guess they're called chows, like the corporate autonomous organization and all that. So we kind of have a range. It's not necessarily full on decentralized, the working opportunities in the clinic. And then, so for the crypto lawyers, it's more if you want to be a supervisor for the law students. And then as far as clients go, we do have that, we have more demand than the speed at which we're kind of growing out the clinic. But we're always happy to chat with people and get to know people and make exceptions where we can and such. And then in LexDAO itself, we love chatting with people that have legal questions. So please hang out. We have membership, LexDAO does, and the membership definitely has lots of values for crypto lawyers and students and such. But anyone can be a member, and we have a few people that aren't lawyers or members. They just really love this kind of stuff, and they join. And membership is $300 a year. It's not too much. And though there's also work for membership. So especially if you're interested in working in the clinic or somewhere else like that, you can just do $300 worth of work. And that's really great for oftentimes that experience for the person who does the work as well as LexDAO. There's the person feels kind of has a sweat equity relationship, not actual equity, but sweat bond. There we go. That's the better term with LexDAO, and we get to know them as well through that process. So work for membership is great. And then we're building out a business membership, that type of thing. So with the business membership, we haven't totally figured it out yet. So I can't really say what it is, but it'll be things like we'll spend office hours in your DAO, a certain number of office hours. And so look for that announcement, DAO to DAO kind of relationships.
Cool. Well, I love the fact that, going back to efficiencies, that so much of law, right? In my real estate experience, that's what my career has been. It's like, I'm like, you see $5,000 on a settlement statement, or, some of the bigger deals I've seen, $50,000 to $75,000 legal fee bills. And you're like, what'd you do? Like that, it was a form contract. Like you just reviewed some title work. there's some real efficiencies that I think LexDAO is working on and streamlining in, form contracts, and that example of the 2-click or 7-click entity formation is just, number one. And I think like purchase agreements and, bills of sales and, like royalty agreements, I think all that stuff could eventually go on chain. And then the ownership transfer, like, James and over, we're talking over in Cougar DAO about like, oh, we could sell the NFT that is the LLC, which is actually the ownership property, ownership interest of the property. And we could just basically transfer the ownership that way. It's mind blowing about like what this could enable for business and finance and for our work, climate and regeneration, restoration, whatnot.
Completely, yeah. And oftentimes the roadblocks are legal roadblocks. For me, coming from the music industry, that I'm kind of more, I guess, anticipated that is starting out something like Spotify. The problem isn't the tech. The problem is getting the licenses from everyone. So where Spotify really succeeded was that they bought those licenses, and so they were able to provide enough of the overall catalog of our popular music, and right that they became the selling point of streaming. But it wasn't really tech, and that's often the times with blockchain. That's one of the roadblocks, and so LexDAO, we work a lot to make sure that roadblock. It's just another area of, and you could think of it as another area of technology, right? To build out law tech as well as straight up developer tech, and so for things like a full solution like Spotify, but with Web3 values and such, right? So for community and that, but yeah, oftentimes it really is actually signing licenses with the right parties, and with real world assets. That's making sure that you have the right to do what you need to do on the land, right?
Yeah, I'm sure you've probably seen charged particles and 0x splits. Have you seen both those projects?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're, Basin, we're using both those for, treasuries, right, inside NFTs with tokens and other NFTs, yield bearing assets, but then also 0x splits for splitting payment streams. And both of those, I think, from what I can tell, and there's a lot of other projects like in the music and entertainment industry, those tools were built or are being built for those, to solve those real world pain points around the entertainment and industry and music industry and film also.
Yeah. From my vantage, me being, I guess, it's my space. So I like to think it has value and everywhere, right? But for my perspective, what we're doing is, no matter what, we've kind of made all of this. We're making all this stuff intellectual property. So, right, if you have an NFT that you can trade ownership of, a certificate of authenticity, that in a sense that you've taken something that is real property and you've abstracted it into kind of intellectual property. So, right, we can think of money, all that as intellectual property. Again, this is my background, so I'm kind of like making a big dent. But we have way more things than we currently do as intellectual properties. Why that matters is that if the licensing, if copyright can figure out the licensing headaches, then that tends to be the most difficult kind of licensing period, especially music. It's so really the agreements between major labels, or you can't have it. NAFTA is equally complex as one of these agreements, right? And so if those hard, to me, that's the hardest problem, and then that can be fairly easily copy pasted to actual much easier situations when for land, real estate, that kind of thing. On the technological side, there's still the friction of does the registry, like in the county, actually, is it going to participate? So then we're getting into the interpersonal relationships that it oftentimes is the thing that actually holds back this tech, which is why it's so important to have that legal background. We see it all the time with securities, right? Where of course the tech can do it, but then suddenly the token is used nefariously, even, right? Just straight up. Like, one way to think about the tech, I guess, is, I like to think about it as, and it might be a little weird, but hammers. They're war hammers and they're carpenter's hammers. And so we want to build as many carpenter hammers as we can here.
Cool. Yeah. Useful tools that do something in the real world. So
yeah.
Well, cool, Kyle. Thanks for taking time out of your day to come by. Like I said, was streamed over at YouTube and LinkedIn, so it'll be available over there. We're gonna edit it down, put it on Spotify and the podcast and iTunes, whatnot. But yeah, thanks for coming, and for those listening, watching, whatnot, please go over, check out LexDAO, check out Gitcoin. So yeah, appreciate you coming.
Thanks. And if you want to go to see our grants, the easy thing to remember, it's lexdaogrant.us. So LEXDAOGRANT.us. And that one, you'll see this new Alpha Round grant also giveth, and yeah, just easier to remember than this really long thing. But
Cool. Well,
yeah.
So for those watching, listening, I'm going to take a short break. I'm going to be back it's 12:30 my time. I'm on Mountain Time, so it's noon Mountain Time. At 12:30, I'll be back with Tater DAO, Cougar DAO, and Real World Asset Consortium for 30 minutes, and then we'll be speaking with Will Masters from Demeter and Ogallala Life, and then to end up the Basin Live session today, we'll have Joe Brewer from Earth Regenerators in Barachara in Colombia. They're regenerating 500,000 hectares, basically an entire watershed in Colombia. So we have some really cool guests and projects coming up. And just a reminder, this is made possible by the Climate Collective and brought to you by basin.global. So thanks for tuning in, Kyle and Pranav. Appreciate you coming and sharing your wisdom and knowledge and everything you're working on. So we'll see you in a little bit.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks.